So welcome back, and this is an opportunity to ask questions or ask for further clarification or anything else you'd like to talk about, bring up. There is one thing I should say, which is if at any time it doesn't feel comfortable to be doing a process like this, just stop. Don't, all kinds of things can come up. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Yeah, you can take it all the way down. Thank you. Yes, James.
Well, I thought I'd just offer some reflections on my experience in the prior meditation.
I don't think is this being recorded? I don't think we're quite there yet.
Oh, I thought
No, we are.
Oh,
it's recording.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, James.
Anyway, I just thought I'd offer some comments about the previous reflections as the means to prime the pump for everybody here. So I perhaps mistakenly took on the demon of all demons, which is sensual craving. And I realized pretty quickly it was it's going to be difficult to, when I asked, what it needed everything, and nothing was going to satisfy it. But what I did take away is when I asked it, I think the question is, how are you going to be my ally? The thought came to me that relinquishment was my ally. That's not profound so far as it goes, but to see it that way and to have that to kind of go back to when sensual desire and craving raises its ugly head is helpful to me. I hope it's helpful, but it certainly wasn't something that that I ever felt that I could turn sensual desire into an ally. So maybe it was not the ideal object for this meditation.
I'm wondering how concrete it became. Like when you use central craving as the demon, it sounds like it wasn't a specific episode of craving. It was maybe more general. Is that right?
Well, I've been experiencing a lot of it lately, and or aware of experiencing it, and this sense of dis-ease that kind of looking for something to fill it in, something to take the dis-ease away. And so in that context, there's been, a lot of kind of jumpy, ill at ease sort of craving to, what am I going to do with myself now? What am I going to do with myself? How do I distract myself from this? So, yeah, that's as specific as it gets. I mean, I can be more specific but I don't know that it's really necessary.
I'm asking because I'm wondering if it was actually possible to see it as a living being and then have this dialogue with it, or if that just wasn't happening this time.
Well, I could have the dialogue, but in terms of kind of asking it what it needed, or as a means of resolving, the tension with it. Um, it wasn't something that was ever going to be
Hmm.
get what it needed. It
Yeah.
was endless. And so I tried to, come back to, well, what is it I need in the context of this experience? And it was to be at peace or free from it, or,
Hmm.
fundamentally to relinquish the craving.
Right.
And that's not exactly an incremental. Well, I mean, it is incremental. I mean, uh, but to know that, that's the only solution. Is
Hmm.
letting it go and letting go as much as you can, or coming back to letting go again and again. It's just it did leave me with renewed awareness of what the task is.
Right. So I'm wondering if maybe if you try it again, um, seeing if you can open more fully to the intuition coming with the answer and not intellectual. So it's kind of, like you already know that relinquishment is, it may be that it needs to go a little deeper. So it goes beyond the reasoning level and into the real intuitive, like what really comes up inside relative to feeling what the feeling is, which the feeling in the body is no longer the craving itself. It's whatever it manifests as, whatever kind of
Right.
sensations those are. And when you get to, like, how will you feel when you get what you need? See if an unrelated kind of like not mentally obvious or intellectually obvious answer might come up. And then that might give you more insight into where the craving, I know, we see the greed, hatred, and delusion as the roots. They've always, in some combination, are behind our, what we want and what we want to get rid of. So I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of go under the surface of for your particular version of it in that particular moment to something, because while it's true that craving in itself is never going to be satisfied, anything in the material world, but it might be possible if you try it again, you might see some quality that your particular system is looking for, that sometimes it's possible to have it for some period of time. It doesn't mean it's stable, but whether it's some kind of security or
Well, I did ask it something to the effect of, what's going to make you feel better, or what do you want? And it was basically peace and feeling safe.
yeah,
Uh,
peace and safety, right? That makes sense.
and so I could feel, reverberations from my conditioning about feeling safe, but um, and I also, could feel, and I can feel right now, it kind of, centered in my solar plexus.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Right.
I can look, pursue that more specifically.
Yeah,
And
because then what you're feeding the demon is this peace and safety. And then when the demon is completely filled with peace and safety, it's not craving any longer. And you think, how does craving ever get satisfied? Well, it is with peace and safety of the Dhamma. Then when it's the peace and safety, it's this being filled with peace and safety, no longer the same being, then the resultant being, that's the ally. So it's true that craving's not going to become your ally. And if relinquishment really is the answer, which I don't think it probably follows that way, because intellectually, yes, relinquishment, but the ally, whatever ally being appears filled with this peace and safety, then sometimes there's an image there, or there's an emblem there that actually can be accessed later in times of stress where peace and safety are really missing. It seems that it can recall this memory of how it feels to be completely filled with peace and safety. So in my experience, this is kind of an interim step to really knowing how to access and reside in that quality without this process, So one time I had a particular situation with someone who had been quite mean to me. And I wasn't clear at all why this person was coming up in my mind and why many instances of that experience were coming up. And I decided, I was in retreat, and I decided to just do a feeding your demons process and see what would come out. And the ally that showed up was a big black dog. And the dog came around with me wherever I went for the rest of the day and into the next day. And then all of a sudden, this very person showed up in my environment without any warning, or I had no idea why. And there they were, and my dog was there, and I was fine. And I just, hello, and walked away. And, it was interesting because it's all about these feelings and these perceptions we have, right? And of course, I don't actually walk around with an imaginary black dog all the time still. I just want you to know. But it's like that image of that. I don't even remember what the qualities were really anymore, but that black dog was the image of the kind of confidence or safety that helped me to hold my place, stand my ground in a sense. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to be aggressive in any way or do anything particularly, but it's in here. It's in the alignment internally, and how that develops. It's like it goes from a specific instance of really reminding us that everything we need is right here already, and that we're not really lacking anything, even though we live in the middle of an enormous chaos and deterioration. But we're spiritually whole, and that wholeness, that completeness is our nature, our true nature. And so this is just like an interim kind of technique to remind us of that. And then when we experience it, and we, just like in the words that Ajahn Amaro gave us this morning, it's like it came out of nothing and it went back into nothing. like that memory of this person and the things that had happened, it came out of nothing. And then when I worked with it, it went back into nothing. And even when I saw that person, whatever would arise inside of me came out of the past. It came out of nothing. I mean, even though those things happened, and even though, and one thing I always want to mention is that there are dangers in the world, and there are dangers with other living beings, and we need to understand the qualities and the characteristics of other living beings so that we don't, put our hand out to pet the cobra. I mean, Ajahn Gunha did that and it worked out fine, but he's Ajahn Gunha, you know what I'm saying? and that may not work so well for me, and so it's like, knowing, what's safe and what's not safe, and being able to be centered and without a self to protect. This is a process, this is like, and these methods that we can use to help us move in that direction to where we're really unshakable. And then when the Buddha talks about the mind being unshakable, this is through wisdom. This is through all the Eightfold Path coming together. And this interim, like, what kind of allies do we need? Big black dog. One time it was a pink polar bear. So cute. And, I mean, and then how do you access them? That's another interesting part, like I had an ally one time that was helping me with a certain relationship with someone very close to me that had a long history of difficulty, good things and difficulties. And, my part of the interaction needed to change. That's all we can change. We can't change the other person's part of the interaction. We can change our part. And where I would go with it was to be completely frozen, incapacitated. And that infuriated the other person every time, And then where that went, when I did the feeding your demons process and I had this ally and I asked that question of how can I gain access to you, they said, touch your heart. And what they promised me was to remind me of my own goodness, because that's what I would forget in that moment. So the next time it happened, I touched my heart and I was reminded of my own goodness. And I didn't freeze. I didn't go into incapacity. I was just clear. And then that person got really upset because you're changing your side of the game and it's just so disconcerting. But after that, I think it happened one more time in a very minor, kind of a low-key way, and then never again. And it's like we can change long-standing patterns. And then, of course, we need to develop our practice in a way that we can see it with wisdom. It's not about having the pink polar bear, the black dog, the touching your heart, the remembering a specific thing. It's not about that, but that's a way to help us get to the point where we really start to let go of the sense of self.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
You're welcome. Paula?
Yeah, although I wasn't able to visualize the ally, how do you say it? Ally? I did, and I don't know if I was like just spitting back my own knowledge base, but I came up with the how will you help me was just staying mindful, which doesn't really, it's not really, it's not, the ally isn't really, I don't know how it would be helping me stay mindful, but it's what came out. And then, oops, my journal, which is locked, keeps locking because I don't want people to read this. And then, How Will You Protect Me came out. I think it was like just awareness.
Mm.
And then what pledge do you make? Do you could you make to me was just emptiness. And I thought that was interesting because in her book, she actually talks about emptiness
Right.
at the end of this. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about that, but and then how you can gain access to me by using mindfulness. And it's not quite as strong as what you did, which was like filling your heart, because that is much more um, like a movement that would actually help you. But I think in a way, I wasn't too far off that when these things happen, this is what I'm trying to do. And I don't want to go into what my whole, demon was
Right, right.
anything, but I feel like I'm struggling to be mindful at those moments. And I mean, I had really vivid demon, and I
Uh-huh.
had, and it's funny because my one thing I wanted to say was that I thought it was really helpful when you said that if it's insatiable, just ask what it would be like if it was satiated, which I was so relieved that you said that because you did this once before a long time ago. You did the Feed the Demon, and at that time, my demon was a black hole. Just
Never gonna fill that one up, huh?
not satiable. And this time it was the same thing, just not, I couldn't satiate it. And
Mhm.
so it was helpful to know that you could still
Yes.
ask.
Yeah. It's very interesting how it just feels like you're feeding, and it's just and maybe this would be helpful to James too, because, and then you just ask, well, what would it be like if you were, satiated? Oh, suddenly the imagination does something else. And the same thing when you're trying to picture the demon and it's not quite coming as a living being. And then you can ask, well, what would you look like if you were a living being? And then the imagination does something with that. I mean, someone asked Lama Sultram, she's like, I feel like I'm just imagining this. She said, of course you're just imagining this. This is coming out of your mind. So you give your mind the clues or the cues, and you see what it does. Um, and it is, the intuitive part of waiting for the answer to bubble up from deep inside is very important. And it's a little bit misleading as I'm doing it with you because I'm taking it a bit fast, maybe, and there's no way to know how much time you really need for those answers to arise. And so, trying it, I think doing it on your own is a really good thing for that purpose. And, like you got a really vivid demon, and then maybe with a little more time, the ally would have been more vivid too. And those things that I described from my own experience, I mean, first of all, I did this process a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So the mind gets more in tune with it. And then, the fact that it came up with a physical movement, and, you're right, that can really be helpful.
Yeah.
And then Lama Sultram, she talks too about how you do this process a bunch of times, and pretty soon you don't have to do the process.
Mm.
You can just go right from the feeling and moving into like letting it dissipate, and a little more like we did this morning maybe too, where it's not about visualization, it's more about just staying with the feeling until it washes away. I mean, there was some visualization with the waves and the water washing it away, it gradually eroding the sandcastle kind of thing. But eventually, you feel a feeling and you go, whoa, look at that. And you kind of like, you don't have the identification with it anymore. And then, it's like, well, it really doesn't have any legs, as they say. It really doesn't have any standing. it just leaves again, so this whole thing will change, but this kind of process, we can always come back to it. We're always getting faced with things we haven't had to deal with before, and we can always come back to the body and come back to where we feel what we feel, and just really try to not buy into the story at all.
And thanks for
Praise.
offering that again, because I think it's one of those things that if you don't practice it, I think you have to practice it like meditation, this process. And the book is really good too. I have it. And she starts with like taking breaths and stuff like that, which I think would be helpful. So I'm going to give it a try. Thank you.
Yeah, and dissolving into emptiness at the end is very nice if you got the time. She talks about, yeah. And I think I found it really beneficial. This was a kind of challenge that was made at a 3-day retreat I was at once that was a little more on a psychological plane. I don't even think I had really met the Dhamma yet at that point. And it was about it's a book called Undefended Love, and the people who wrote it were leading this workshop. And one of the things that they brought this like 87 participants or whatever it was through this process to see like what is at the root of our discomfort, really. What is at the root in our mind? And I mentioned earlier, my version of it was, am I good enough? Or I'm not good enough. Some people, it's like they feel like they're not lovable, or there's just all different. We have different ways of having this feeling of inadequacy inside. It's to a large degree what motivates our selfing. And so it's like at the end of this 3-day retreat, the challenge was made. Like, what if you did this process for every time you're triggered for some period of time? And when I picked that up and did it, that was really helpful. Yeah, Hansi.
Hello, Ayya. So I really enjoyed this time, the Feeding Your Demons session, because the last time, it was back in 2021. I tried to do it, and like you mentioned earlier, it was so unbearable at the time, so I couldn't complete it. So I just stopped it, and it was too difficult at the time. But right now, I think after more experience with the Dhamma and more meditation, I think my mind has settled further. So I was able to do it this time, and I think I will keep doing it to recognize the deep causes of my suffering. I was very surprised with what came up. The demon needed love. I didn't think that would be the reason. So now I have to investigate further. It might be something that comes from my childhood, something that I felt lacking.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at first when you mentioned in the previous meditation about respect, I thought, oh, that might be the one that comes up as my demon, but no, it wasn't.
Yeah, good.
And I'm glad you mentioned if the demon turns into something that's non-living, because mine did turn into a honeycomb.
Yeah.
And the ally was, it was the food for the ally. So they just
Okay.
there. Lots of imagination.
Yeah, it can really be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ayya.
You're welcome. Yeah, and it's good to remember that when you meditate, if you have nimittas, whatever simplicity or complexity they are, that's also coming out of the mind. And you'll notice that, what we feed our mind in terms of sense input, this is what it has to work with. Whether it's things coming out in dreams or nimittas or, nimittas or any kind of like sights or sounds, images or whatever that comes up into our meditation or this kind of thing, feeding your demons or whatever, it's all just coming out of our mind. And yeah, it's a real motivation to feed the mind wholesome things that you want to see again, kind of thing. And just appreciate that it may inform us in some way about how to work with our own conditioning and become free of it. Aaron?
Yeah, for the first break, I went for a walk in quiet neighborhood. For the second break, I went for a walk in busy downtown. And walk in busy downtown, I was kind of primed for it because I was in a good, deep, mindful state. But so it was just interesting to witness. But what relates to this, the feeding the demons, is there was someone that saw me coming from very far away, and I was approaching. I was walking so slow, and I was like, "Oh, they have so much time to go, and I'm just taking my time." But they really wanted to wait for me, so they were just stopping. They're like waiting me on, even though they didn't have a stop. And I didn't want to go fast, but I was like, "All right, I'll go fast. Get out, I'll move." And so there was a lot of contradiction in me about just like I didn't want to be rushed. This whole dialogue, and it was great. Like I just kind of instantly imagined that all those feelings were like this wild, crazy demon of anger that was just sitting there in front of me. And as soon as I had that imagination, I felt joy and kind of levity towards it. Of like, you're so just like there's no point of this. It's just we just need to be soft and kind. And I didn't need to go through the whole process. I just taking it out of me was enough to release.
Yes.
And then I was calm. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of really helps us to remember how illusory all these things are and how impermanent they are. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Carol?
Sure, just a quick question because I missed most of today, but I heard someone mention a book. So was this guided meditation, did it come from a book?
Good. So the guided meditation this morning, you heard what book that came from, right? Did you?
No, I didn't hear any of that.
Okay, so that was from Ajahn Amaro's little book called Just One More. Just one, is it Just One More?
I think so.
And it's from page 63. I printed it out, but yeah. And that can be found online. And then the book that I used this afternoon was Feeding Your Demons.
Okay, that's the one I was interested in. Okay.
Lama
Okay.
Sultram Alayone, Sultram Alayone there at the bottom. And
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll look for it.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's a good process. And it's in the chat as well. Yeah, I'll stick it in. Any other questions or comments? All demons are satisfied for the moment. Great. Well, in that case, I think we'll just say so long for now. And yeah, I hope you have wonderful practice until we meet again and forever after that.
Yeah, we're having a New Year's thing online too. It'll be online
Yeah.
too, so you can come. We do that thing with the
Should you train
Yeah.
yourselves? So
so you get your New Year's resolution from the Buddha if you come. We pick it out of a hat for you and read it.
yeah, if you're there in person, you pick it out yourself. And yeah, so today was intended to give us some opportunity to look over the past year and see what we want to keep and what we want to let go of. And Ajahn Ganha didn't say it in the same way so much this visit we had with him this year, but last year he frequently said, set the past to zero. Let go of the past. And at least once, and probably more than once this year, he said, only think about the good things. So, of course, if there are things from the past that are unresolved, then we want to bring them to resolution. And it's not like we can change the past. We did what we did, other people did what they did. Okay. But we can change our patterns and our reactions in a way that we are not repeating the same things in the future if they're unskillful. And we can forgive. So it really bringing a lot of kindness, compassion, and forgiveness for ourselves and for others in whatever it is that came before, and then letting it go. And remembering the good things, the wholesome things, the kind, generous actions that, all of those good things are important to encourage us and inspire us to develop more of that in the future. So we really, whatever pops into the mind, it's only there because of past experience. It's not something we try to think about. I mean, when it's something we're trying to think about, there's karma that we're making there, thought karma, mental karma. But when it just pops into your mind, you're not responsible for that. It's like anything can show up there that has been, known in the past. But then what we do about it, if it's negative, if it's painful, not add to the story, don't perpetuate it into the future, but process it and let it go. And getting clear about what we want to do, well, how we want to be different, how we want to think differently, how we want to adjust our perceptions, where this is related to the sense of self and how we can let that go. What is it like without the sense of self? How does it feel? What would that be like? What's our response then? So all these things are important for our practice. But start with a clean slate in 2025. And when we have that, clear the slate, and then on New Year's Day, it's a good way to start the year if we can, whether we're online together or meeting together or you're on your own someplace, starting out, with this idea of how you want to train yourself. Do we have to train ourselves? We train our own mind. Ajahn Ganha said, train yourself 100%. And if you're teaching the Dhamma, he would say to us, and train other people. One time last year, he said, train yourself 100% and train other people 100%. Next time he said that, he said, train yourself 100%, train other people like 50%. Because you can't train other people 100%. It doesn't work like that. They've got to do it, and this year, a lot of times he said, don't correct others, just correct yourself. And that's really in general true. It's only when you have the responsibility, like you're a parent or you're a teacher and your job is to help people train themselves. And we need to take that responsibility seriously. But in most cases, it's just our own, mind that we should train. That's where the benefit is. And that's where our influence is. So we'll do what we can. And then, looking to the Buddha, he gave a lot of good instructions. And for anyone who hasn't heard about it yet, look into the Upasika program and see if you are able to and want to join this year. It's our first time doing it, and we're really pretty happy about what's unfolding. So we've got, how many people have we got who've applied?
Somewhere like maybe 41 or 2, because there's a couple of little flukes in there, so probably about 40.
Probably around 40 or so people have applied. And if people come regularly to our programs, then they're going to definitely be able to come. There are a couple of cases where people are really not on the same page, and we'll encourage them to get more involved, and maybe they do it next year. But it's like, and if you want more description about that, it's on our website. So you might already all know about it. So it's good. Okay. You're welcome. Thank you all. I hope you have a really wonderful rest of the year and a great year next year. Hope to see you soon.